Morning. Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. Good morning. What a great crowd. Well, good morning. It's great to be here. It's appropriate, as I've said in years past, that we're talking about manufacturing matters, and I'm going to spend some time talking this morning why it matters in Wisconsin. In fact, it's kind of interesting. I was listening to the update there. I'm looking at the flag here, and it's not open right now, but if you saw it fully taught, you'd see the shield on that flag that's 150 years old this year. In 1863, soldiers in the Civil War asked for a banner to fly in addition to Old Glory. Over 91,000 soldiers from Wisconsin were fighting in that Civil War, but on that shield, in the bottom left-hand corner of the shield, is a symbol of manufacturing. So manufacturing is a key part of our heritage, and more importantly, as we're going to talk about now, it's an even greater and more significant part of our future. I want to talk about that this morning. Now, you got a great overview of how important it is, about 20% of the state's economy. When you think about the growing opportunities not only here but around the globe, last year, we just announced this last week, exports in this state went up by about 47%, or excuse me, well, that'd be nice too, 4.7%. I'm optimistic, but I got to be realistic as well. In some areas, maybe about 47%, but 4.7%, that compares to about 4.5% nationally. And there's a tremendous opportunity for us there. It's about 96% of the world's population lives outside of the United States, about 2/3 of the purchasing power. And the great thing is the folks in WDC as well as in DATCAP and other areas can help, particularly manufacturers with, is it's not just large corporations that are exporting these days, it's small and mid-sized companies as well. And we want to help you grow that because the top 3 components of our export growth last year were all in manufacturing. So you can help us do that. And it's something I see day in and day out as I travel the state. I know you're going to hear from Dan Ahrens later, but I know this week, this is one of those weeks Dan Ahrens gets on his knees and thanks God for all the time, because I was with him last year when they dedicated their 3 millionth snow thrower. I think after this week here and across the country, you're probably close to 4 million and approaching. But whether it's Ahrens or Millet Electric I was at last week up in the Northeast, whether it's over in Whitehall and Arcadia where we're helping Ashley Furniture grow, whether it's manufacturers like that all across the state and all of you here and those that you represent, we're excited about manufacturing. In fact, yesterday I was just over a little bit in the Waukesha County at Altosham, which is a company that has got a little over 300 employees. It actually is a great story like so many manufacturers here across the state. It's a company that was started in 1955 when the owner had an idea. He was with Chicken Delight, the franchises, and was trying to figure out how to keep his product warm and realized the idea he had was a lot more profitable than the franchises, and so evolved that company into a company today that has more than 300 employees. And yesterday we joined with those employees in announcing an expansion that was just about completed that will add another 110 employees. The state was proud to be a partner in that, but really it was the innovation of that owner base, the son and daughter, Steve and Karen, who took over for their father, who started the company in 1955 and built it in what it is today. But it's not just about them, it's indicative of so many manufacturers across the state of Wisconsin. What I was particularly intrigued with yesterday is we announced not just the expansion, but one of the other great things, they call it not profit sharing, but gain sharing program. They announced a 12% gain sharing yesterday. So you can imagine there were a lot of happy people, not because I was there, but because I was there as part of their announcement of that. But they showed, just to put a little reality check of where they come from and where they were at, they showed how things had progressed from 2008 through 2012. Probably like a lot of companies here, 2007 into 2008, there was a dip because of the national economic slowdown, if not outright recession, and they showed what it took to build back up. In many ways, Wisconsin's a little bit like that. In 2008, 2009, and 2010, we lost about 150,000 jobs in the state. Back in the peak during that time frame, our unemployment rate was over 9%. You know, times were tough. Times were tough across the country. They were certainly tough in Wisconsin, and they were particularly tough in many areas in manufacturing. And the good news is you all, just like the state did, started turning things around. In fact, when I think about when I was first running for governor, I guess I have to say first because now it's 2 times, but when I first ran for governor in 2010, I looked at the statewide chamber survey of employers and found at the time it was shocking to me that only 10% of our employers in Wisconsin thought we were headed in the right direction. So unemployment a few years ago peaked over 9%. The feeling amongst our employers, the people who put people to work, was only about 1 out of 10 thought we were heading in the right direction. We knew coming in we had to fundamentally turn things around. And so when we did, we lowered the tax burden. We didn't just balance the budget. We lowered the tax burden. We started to streamline the regulatory process. So what we enforce is overwhelmingly about common sense and not about bureaucratic red tape. We pulled back on the frivolous and out-of-control lawsuits that were standing in the way of productivity. We did all these things, and we're not done yet. I want to spend a few minutes talking about what we're going to do going forward. But just in terms of an update over the past year, think about it. We went from 10% who thought we were heading in the right direction in 2010 to last year, last fall when they did the same survey, 93% of our employers believe Wisconsin's heading in the right direction. How's that for a turnaround? 10% to 93. On top of that, we're getting notice elsewhere. Our number one priority, I used to work just down the way in the 411 building. When I was in college, I sold warranty agreements for IBM to pay for school. And they used to teach me then, well, they taught me how to dress, which I'm still doing today. Blue suit, white shirt, blue tie. I'm still, you can't get out of the big blue, I guess. But they also taught me that in sales, you spend about 3/4 of your time with your existing customers because they know you, they believe in you, they support you, they're the best customer base, and about 1/4 of the time finding out what new customers you could draw in. And so I try to apply that same standard when it comes to what we do with economic development in the state. First and foremost, provide for our existing employers, make it easier to do business here, make it more profitable to do business here, be a better partner with you, and again, we're going to talk about that in a moment. But the other part is, you know, make an appeal. And lately with Illinois, it's been kind of nice to make an appeal to come on north. A couple weeks ago, Minnesota made another good pitch for us when they announced a $2 billion tax increase, much of which is targeted at employers in the state of Minnesota. So we're going to try and track from the west and from the south to come up into the state. And part of that appeal is, you know, the same sorts of rankings that we had with our internal Chamber of Commerce. Chief Executive Magazine that a few years ago used to have us in the bottom 10, now has us last year as high as number 20. CNBC has us at number 17, and Site Selection Magazine as the highest we've been in a 1/4 century, and that is number 13 in terms of the best and the worst states to do business in. Now, I'm not satisfied just moving up. I want to be in the top 10 in the foreseeable future, and sometime soon before I'm done being your governor, I'd like to be competing for number 1, not because of the title or because of the ranking, because that means it makes it easier for you to do business in the state, and it makes it easier to attract new employers to join you here in the state of Wisconsin. So what can we do to make that happen? Well, there's 5 key areas we're honing in on in our budget, and 5 key areas we're trying to draw the legislature into focusing in on. You know, lawmakers in both parties sometimes can get distracted with other issues and other things, and so I said, here are 5 issues. In fact, a number of you helped me in November and December as we hosted Talk with Walker sessions, where I talk with your employees about why we're honing in on these 5 priorities, but they're real simple. Create jobs, develop the workforce, transform education, reform government, and invest in our infrastructure. Let me spend literally a minute or 2 on each one. First off, creating jobs. I understand something that is foreign in Washington. I was just there last week, and in the past at least was somewhat foreign in our State House, and that is government doesn't create jobs, you do. So what can we do? We can be a better partner. We can get government out of the way where it's a barrier, and we can be a better partner where we're an ally. First and foremost, we need to lower the cost of doing business. That's why in this budget, there is a $630 million worth of tax cuts, half of which you hear a lot about, half of which has been on the front pages of the papers. That are the income tax cuts that apply all to you as individuals, as well as those of you who are LLCs or S-Corps or others who pay taxes not at the corporate level but at the individual level. That's all beneficial to you. And so for small and mid-sized businesses organized paying individual income taxes, that's more money that goes right back into not just your bottom line, but as I know, traveling, visiting many of the employers of the state, it's likely, more often than not, to go right back in the capital that's reinvested in your business that then allows you to hire more people. So we understand cutting income taxes, particularly at a time when Illinois has and Minnesota soon will raise taxes, is a great contrast, and it provides for greater productivity. The other part that doesn't get a lot of media coverage is that's $343 million worth of the tax cut. The remainder of the $630 million is largely driven by the manufacturing and agricultural tax credit we put in the last budget, and it's being fully implemented over the next 2 years. A lot of people don't know this, but by 2015, For manufacturers in this state, your tax benefit will be 7.5%. That's phenomenal. That's one of those things. In fact, one of the guys who I love goes around talking to chambers and rotaries and a lot is Rick Chandler, my secretary of the Department of Revenue. You might think, why is he out there, a guy that's a tax collector? Well, he's out there telling businesses what an incredible economic opportunity there is there. You add that to the fact that we have 100% exemption for capital gains in this state, for investments made in Wisconsin-based companies. That's a great story to tell, not only for all of you, but for people you're trying to get to invest in your companies as you're seeking to grow. We've got a great tax incentive for you out there to encourage more investment and to help your bottom line so you can reinvest the money you bring in, not just for profits, but more importantly, for putting even more people to work in the future. Sure. Now, on top of that tax relief, as was alluded to, we put more money in for investment capital. Because we understand not only do we want more startups and emerging companies, we understand that to create more jobs in the state, we've got to have more investments in capital and things that put people to work. In fact, a lot of you who've joined with me as I've toured your establishments know that I'm obsessive as we tour by pieces of equipment, and there's all sorts of cool equipment and manufacturers across the state. I often ask, how much did that cost? How much did that cost? You just add that, how much did that cost? And it's not because I'm doing an audit or anything like that. It's simply put because it helps remind me when I go back to Madison, when people talk about the tax relief we put in the last budget and the additional tax relief we put in this budget, and we tie it into the manufacturing tax credit, that's because for you in manufacturing to put people to work, overwhelmingly, you need to make investments in capital. And so we want to be at a point where we help not only in terms of tax relief, but when we help bridge that gap with traditional financial institutions to help make the link so that the money's available, whether it's through WDC, whether it's through WIDA, whether it's through other components that we can help put together. There's a great opportunity to help you leverage the dollars you need to make the investments to grow your company. That's tremendously important. And then the final thing in terms of creating jobs is marketing. Now you might say, well, what does marketing have to do with it? You know, you're doing a pretty good job up there rattling off those numbers. Well, just look as a parallel example. 2 years ago in our budget, even though it was a tough time and we took a $3.6 billion budget deficit, and I'm proud to say today we have nearly a $500 million budget surplus. So it shows, just like you all have done over the last several years in tough times in the economy, and you've made important, tough but prudent decisions. We did the same thing in state government. But one of the investments we added, even in a tough budget 2 years ago, was in tourism. We understood from a retail standpoint, sometimes the time when you need to invest in advertising is the time when times are the toughest because you need to draw more customers in. The good news is in tourism, it worked. 2 years ago, the impact of tourism in our state on the state's economy was about $14.8 billion total impact. Largely because of that investment in new marketing, last year it rose to about $16 billion. So it had a significant impact. We've added about 5 times what we had in marketing in the past in this budget for business and business opportunities in the state, not just to market outside of the state, but internally as well. We're not just about drawing new employers in, certainly that's important, but it's about helping sell not just what's good about the state, but particularly helping sell manufacturing. Because one of the things, and we were just, in fact, not too long ago, I see some of my friends from Waukesha, they've got a great effort, as do others, about showing how manufacturing makes a difference, not just in our state's economy, but in terms of young people thinking about manufacturing careers. And I know a lot of people have been working on that. I'm going to touch on that in a moment on workforce development, but even helping to sell the value of manufacturing. Sometimes the media asks me, why do you obsessively go to manufacturers all across the state? Why are you always walking around floors of manufacturers? I said it's important for people to see that there aren't just good jobs, there's good careers in manufacturing. And they're good pay, they're good opportunities, they're good careers, and they're in great places that kind of defy the myth that some people have about manufacturing, that somehow the jobs have gone overseas or they're in dark, deep places, and instead they're in exciting, dynamic, teamwork-led places that provide not just jobs but careers out there. We need to help market that as well because we don't have enough skilled workers to fill the spots that we have open today, and that goes into our second point, developing the workforce. We put almost $100 million in this budget to help develop the workforce. And we do it from a variety of spectrums, from everything from industry clusters in manufacturing to information technology to even healthcare, from the full range, even in healthcare, everywhere from certified nursing assistants all the way to physicians in rural parts across the state. And when it comes to manufacturing, we're doing everything from taking the enhancing our University of Wisconsin flex options so that we can more appropriately and effectively put more engineers into the workforce with the new flex option, understanding that about a quarter of the population in the state are people who have some college credit but don't have a degree. And so engineering is one of those key areas in which we're accelerating that through the UW Flex Option program. So if you've got somebody working for you who doesn't have an engineering degree, but they've been working with other engineers, they can take what they've learned and be tested, still competency-based, it's not just for life experience, be competency-based, add it to college credits they took in the past, maybe some online, and then figure out what they need left to get that engineering degree. We're going to make it easier because we know for non-traditional adult learners, the two biggest barriers are time and money. We reduce the amount of time, reduce the cost. We're just asking people to pay for the cost of the testing and whatever additional courses they need. That helps them and it helps you because it gets more engineers into the pipeline and into your workplaces quicker. When it comes to our technical colleges, we put more money into the technical college system. Many of them have been great partners, whether it's WCTC or NTC or Western Tech or others around the state, to make that connection to say what are the needs that you have. One of the things we're literally just working on this week is putting about $20 million into workforce development grants and a new LMI system, a labor management information system. Some of you may have heard us talk about that, but you know, every month through the federal government, through the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we're required to take a sample, and that's a sample you read about in the media. The problem is in Wisconsin, it's about 3.5% of the employers. Now, how many of you would take a sample of 3.5% of your customers each month and think that was an accurate reflection of where your customer base is? Yet that's what we're required to do under federal law. So sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, it's all over the place. The more accurate representation of the employment trends in this state are the quarterly numbers that come out, but they come out, as I mentioned, on a quarterly basis, and then there's a 6-month lag before we actually see them. So the numbers through the end of December of 2012 don't come out till June 2013. Now, how can any of you, how can our technical colleges, how can our workforce investment boards, how can any of us effectively adapt on a time-sensitive basis to those sorts of trends out there when you have that kind of delay? And so what we're proposing to do, and we've got legislation that's passed through one house and will be passed through the other, creates a new LMI system where we try to the extent possible to create a real-time method by which we collect job trend data in the state of Wisconsin, and then we give it to you, and we apply it to our technical colleges and other workforce development programs. The idea being is if we have a shortage in CNA or CNC operators or fabricators or high-skilled welders in one part of the state versus another, we need to be able to adapt to that. We need to be able to put resources there and shift just like you would within your own operations. We need to be more aggressive and have real-time data that's efficient and effective to do that. So we're providing a multitude of different ways of attacking that because one of the most frustrating things I've found is the number of employers, particularly in manufacturing, who tell me not only do I have a hard time filling, say, welding or fabricating positions, but who tell me it's not just a problem of filling spots I have today. I've had any number of employers say to me, I not only would need help filling the spots I have, I'd actually add more work. I had an employer not far from here not long ago tell me he had shortages in high-skilled welders, that was causing a problem for him. And he said what's the most frustrating thing is he has 2 shifts. He'd add a 3rd shift of about 25 more employees, but he doesn't dare take on that additional work if he can't fill the spots he has in the first place because he doesn't want to let his current customers down. So he's not going to take the additional work on. Well, that's crazy. That's crazy. Even though our unemployment rate, I mentioned that was peaked over 9%, that was 7.8% when I first took office. It's now down to almost 6.5%. That's great, but think about how many more people we could put to work if we not only could fill the spots we had open today, we made it easier for all of you to grow your companies and have the confidence of knowing if you take that leap of faith, if you make that risk, that there's actually going to be a skilled workforce there to be with you. And you're right in the acknowledgement. I take it a step further. I think the state, because it's not unique to Wisconsin, heck, it's not unique to America, but the state that can get out front and be the leader when it comes to solving the work shortages we have in key clusters will not only be on the right track, I think we will be the leader in the country in economic revival. I think we're the state that's going to lead the way. So you got create more jobs, develop the workforce. I'm sorry I'm rattling through this quickly, but I get pumped up and excited about this. Even this early in the morning, when I see all you manufacturers out there, I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and I want to fill your heads with some of the good information that we're doing going forward so you can help me with the legislature and others spread the message. You know, in addition to those two, we need to transform education in this state. You know, because in the short term and the mid-range term, we've got to fill the gap to those jobs that are open. We got to do that right away, and that's why we're talking about our workforce development programs and our technical schools. But going forward, we've got to continue to transform K through 12 education in the state, because we got to make sure there's a steady pipeline. Because if you're going to make that risk, if you're going to step out and add more jobs, if we're going to attract other employers to join you in this state, we got to show that not just in the short term but long term, we've got a steady pipeline, a steady supply of people who are soon going to be young adults who are going to have the skills needed, the work ethic needed, the content needed to be great employees. And so we've got to transform education, and that means a little bit of a wake-up call. You know, for example, in our budget, we say in Wisconsin, we routinely rank at the top. We're one of the top 2 or 3 states when it comes to ACT tests. The problem with that is, that the little secret of that is that's because only a handful of students in most states take the ACT. Only the college-bound, only those who want to go on to a 4-year degree program where they're required to do that to go to a 4-year college do that. Not every student takes the ACT. And so in our budget, we're taking a little bit of a risk ourselves. Certainly it's a risk for me politically, because now instead of having just those top students take it, we're going to have every student take the ACT. And we're going to take it through the ACT suite, which means there's more than just one component. There are those who don't want to go on a 4-year college track. There's a career track as well that gives an alternative. But we want to know where every student is at, so we know where we can plug them in. And in fact, we're not just going to do it with ACT. We're starting out early, all the way to 6th grade. We put resources in to do academic and career assessments all the way to 6th grade. Why? Because when we look globally, what are the countries that are leading the way when it comes to education reform? They're the countries that early on say, what's this kid's interest? What is this kid good at? What are their interests in? And how do we plug them in a path so they start thinking? And if it's a 4-year degree career, that's great. If it's a 2-year degree, that's super. But it's got to be, and overwhelmingly, it's got to be something more than just K through 12. And so early on, we need to plug people into where we're at. In fact, it's interesting. If you look last year in the Wisconsin Technical College system, one of the fastest growing groups of new admissions are students with 4-year degrees. Why? They went through a college or university in this state or somewhere else, paid for that. We subsidized it as taxpayers. Their parents, I got one in college, one on his way. I got one at Marquette, one going to Wisconsin. I said, I know as much as any of you parents out there, subsidize it from parents as well as taxpayers. But now in that group, now after 4 years, they're going in and realizing, you know, the job, the career I really want, the jobs that are open, the careers that are open, the careers that really are paying require the 2-year, not the 4-year degree. And so increasingly there are more and more there. Well, we need to get to those people earlier on in life and figure out what their career interests in and plug them in. Not only because it's good for them, because they get to go through a shorter amount of time in school, you all get them in the workforce sooner, and as taxpayers, we don't have to subsidize them twice, once at a 4-year and then at a 2-year. We've got to be smarter about this, and we've got to get people into the workforce sooner. And increasingly, it's both a challenge and an opportunity. If anybody here is the HR person at your manufacturing site, you know probably better than anybody else here that ultimately, one of our great challenges is ultimately one of our great opportunities. HR directors, if you're looking ahead, you know that there's a disproportionately large number of our workforce today that are at or near baby boomer age. So they're at or near, or in baby boomer age, I should say. So they're at or near retirement. Well, that's good and bad. I mean, I was at one of the employers we're going to honor tonight at the Manufacturer of the Year event just down the way here is from Ripon. And we helped them announce a major expansion earlier this year. And one of the cool employees I met was a guy that's been there literally 4 years longer at that company than I've been alive. So he's a great employee, 50-year employee, a tremendous asset, still has that spunk, still energized. He's got a farm. He says, what am I going to do? I don't have enough farming to take care of, so I got to keep coming into work. Great guy, great enthusiasm. Now, obviously, most people haven't worked at our companies that long, but for those who've been there 20, 25, 30 years, you look at the quality of those workers, the skills that they have, the work ethic that they bring to the table. In a few years, as they continue to retire, we got to make sure there's more people to replace them. And so transforming our education system now so that we've got a steady supply of well-trained, highly work-effective, high work ethic type students coming out of our K through 12 system is incredibly important, and that's something we're focused in as well. The fourth thing is reforming government. Now, you think of reforming government, it sounds like, wonky. It was Al Gore talked about, reinventing government. I'm not talking about that. We've done a lot of that over the last 2 years, and hopefully some of it you've seen already beneficial to all of you. Good example being the DNR. You'd be surprised, but one of the first state agencies I empowered to go train all their managers in was the DNR, and we allowed them to train their managers in Lean Six Sigma. Imagine that. And they're not all perfect yet. Don't get me wrong. I'm not here to claim perfection, but I hope many of you have seen a more customer-friendly environment, knowing that we still all want clean air, clean land, clean water, but it's a lot easier helping you comply up front and deal with the things that we all have central goals on, as opposed to dealing with compliance issues when they failed afterwards. And so we've tried to be smarter, more efficient, more effective in that. But beyond that, part of what we want to do in reforming government helps you in the workplace as well. In fact, it helps put more people into the workplace. A good example of this is food stamps. Wisconsin was one of 46 states over the last few years that has gotten a waiver from the federal government not to require work or work employment training skills for people on food stamps. I got rid of that waiver. And in this budget, more than 75,000 people, able-bodied, non-elderly adults today, going forward, will be required to be in an employment training program in order to get food stamps. Now, after I announced that, somebody, a cynic said, well, governors make it harder for people to get government assistance. I said, no, I'm not. I'm making it easier to get a job. That's the difference. I'm not making it harder to get government assistance. I'm making it easier to get a job. Too often, common sense things like that are portrayed by some politically as though those are harsh on people. They're not harsh. I care too much about the people in my state to want them to live a life of dependency on the government. I love them too much. I want them to live true freedom and true opportunity, and you don't do that through dependency on the government. You earn that through the dignity of a job by controlling your own destiny, your own determination. That means true freedom and prosperity. That's what you get through the dignity of work. And if no one expects you to do it, of course you're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to empower people to do that. Let me give you one quick story as to why I think that's so powerful. In this state, up until this recent announcement, we had a voluntary program that people didn't have to. So instead of having those 75,000 plus, we had at best a few thousand who would voluntarily take a part of this program. One of those people who did that was a woman named Elizabeth last year. Single mom here in Milwaukee. She wanted something better than just being dependent on the government. So she signed up for our program. The program is provided right here in Milwaukee County. She got the training she needed to get a job. She got set up. In fact, she got partners, so she was just up the way here, the Milwaukee Area Technical College. She got training as a certified nursing assistant. And last Wednesday, when I gave my budget address and wanted to mention her as an example, I did. But I did it without her there. Why? Because she worked all day at her job as a CNA, and then she went back at night to start the beginning of her education to be a registered nurse here in the state of Wisconsin. That's what it's about. It's about making sure that when there's a job opening like the one Elizabeth found, that our people today in the state who are currently dependent on the government for things like food stamp have the training and the skills they needed to get in the workforce. It's not only good for them, it's good for all of us. It's not just good for us as taxpayers, it's good for us as employers. Because instead of people sitting back at home whining about how things aren't so good, instead we're empowering them, giving the skills they need, the work ethic, the encouragement they need to get right back into the workforce, and those are the people we can plug right into the jobs that you have open today. So we got to continue to reform government. And finally, we got to make investments in infrastructure. In our budget, we put about $6.4 billion into transportation, everything from the Home Bridge and the Zoo Interchange here in southeastern Wisconsin to projects all across the state. And they're not just about roads and bridges. They're about freight rail. I was over in Sauk County recently at Seneca talking with employees there about how important the freight rail line is there, whether it's looking at our ports, whether it's in Milwaukee or Green Bay or Superior, particularly in manufacturing. When I mentioned those top three categories and talking about the impact of exports across the globe, you got to have a good intermodal system. You got to have a way, whether it's in freight rail or over the road traffic in our ports and our airports. We're invested in that. We're also invested when it comes to high-speed internet connections, particularly for rural and remote parts of the state of Wisconsin, when it comes to improving our healthcare options through our healthcare systems, and particularly when it comes to cost-effective and reliable sources of power. And just one quick thing on that, and I actually printed this out because I wanted to make sure I announced this correctly. But one thing on that not only for cost-effective, reliable sources of power, but in the WMEP report, one of the things, it's a great partnership between WMEP and the WEDC, the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, is a program that's part of the PSI, and it's not pounds per square inch on your tires. It's the Profitable Sustainability Initiative, PSI. And there's a long, lengthy explanation. I'll explain it in these simple terms. It's something I've said for the last couple of years. If people want to be green, the best way to be green is to make green or save green. If you want to be environmentally sustainable, it needs to be economically sustainable. And so what this program has done, and it's a great partnership between both the state and the WMEP, is to say we're going to help, particularly manufacturers, we're going to help find ways to be more efficient, more effective with the uses of your energy supplies in a way that's not just about being green, but it's about saving you green, or in many cases making you green, making money or saving money. And who doesn't want to do that? And so there's been tremendous success already in terms of optimizing energy use and reducing waste. Through the first 2 phases of PSI, more than 90 companies have participated and developed projects. These companies have reduced costs by more than $74 million, increased sales by more than $147 million, and created 58 new jobs as a direct result of this program. So being green by making green or saving green, it's a great way to do it. Because of that success, those first 2 phases, I'm pleased to announce today that the WMEP and the Northwest Wisconsin Manufacturing Outreach Center are seeking an additional 32 new companies to participate in phase 3. So follow up today on that. We've got, you're going to be able to learn more about it at one of the later sessions, but find out how you can be one of those companies that join in phase 3 of that program, because it's a tremendous opportunity to both be environmentally sound, but do so in a way that's economically sound as well. And so the thing I just want to last in with is yesterday I heard it again, excuse me, when I was over at Altosham in Menominee Falls, and sometimes I hear it when I tour the plant floors and businesses like yours across the state of Wisconsin, and somebody will come up and thank us for what we've done over the last 2 years, and they often, more often than not, use the word courage. And I'll tell you, I appreciate that. I really do. Actually, the thing I really appreciate is a lot of people come up and tell me they're praying for me and my family, and I appreciate that more than anything. I usually actually reach out and touch them again, because I said there's nothing more powerful than somebody who means it telling you they're praying for you. And you need to feel people, whether it's in politics or business or anywhere else out there. But I often pause and think about that, because some of the things that we've done over the last 2 years to get our budget in check, to get our economy back on track, to get our state headed in the right direction, may be viewed as being courageous in politics. But I said, why is it that politics is about the only profession where you get called courageous just by keeping your word? Everywhere else in life, in your business life, it's certainly expected, right? It's the exception if someone doesn't keep their word, not the norm, and sometimes it's the other way in politics. And I said, for me, the encouragement we get to go down that path, to keep being aggressive and pushing forward, to do the right thing, to help empower you, the people of this state, the employers of the state in particular, is real simple. It's when I visit your plants and factories, when I visit your manufacturing sites across the state, what I find are moms and dads, just like Tonette and I, who go to work and work hard every day, who work hard for just the same reason that Tonette and I work hard every day as well. We go to work not just to put food on the table for our kids, not just to put clothes on the backs of those kids, not just to pay the mortgage on our homes or to pay off the bills we have at home. More than anything, we work hard each and every day, just as our parents and grandparents did long before us, because we want our children to have a better life, a better home, a better community, and ultimately a better state than the one we inherited. That's what this is all about. I got to think, for all of you who had a dream with the company that many of you here may have started yourself, it wasn't just because someday you wanted to grow up and be rich and have a nice life. It was really because you had a dream and you wanted to employ people and you wanted to make something and you wanted to have an impact, not only in your own life, but on the lives of the people you employ and the communities in which you preside. That's what we're doing, and together, I'm convinced if we stay focused on that, it's not just the courage of 1 or 2 or 3, it's the courage of all of us collectively that's going to help move the state and ultimately this country forward. Thank you for being a part of it. I appreciate it.